It's Friday night and welcome to the Fancaste, episode 31. I'm your humble and soon-to-be employed host, Brainmuffin. With me tonight is Liquid Mo Pro.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have seen Black Panther, and that movie literally made me sick with the flu.
And all the way from the other side of the country, Mr. Erik Ward.
I feel like I just ate Kathleen Kennedy out. And in case you can't guess, I'm not feeling very good right now. I hope you're feeling much better.
Yep. It seems the bugaboo flu is going around and has been hitting us quite a bit. So we haven't, and that's why we didn't record last week. Not because we were too lazy. It's just that everybody was quite ill and had no energy. So we're going to try and struggle through some kind of show today and get this out there so that people don't miss us too much.
Damn right. Although I do have to confess, only half of the statement I made is true. Unfortunately, it's the flu part.
Yes. So, yes, none of us have seen the absolute cultural phenomenon, which we'll talk about later, Black Panther. So first up, so has anybody listened to episode 111, or am I the only one?
I listened to like 3/4 of it.
Okay.
About the same here.
Yeah, I listened to the whole thing, started listening to start making a timeline, and decided I'd rather take a nap, and then I haven't been back to it. So that's why there's no timeline, and that's why we're a little discombobulated. Maybe we'll talk about some of the stuff they did. Maybe we won't talk about anything at all. So who cares? So I have some news, but does anybody have news? Because next week it's Jeff Hicks.
The only real news I have is, as I'm sure you're probably aware, that Mark Hamill will be getting a star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. I don't know when, sometime this year, I would imagine. But I thought that was really cool, that he's going to get that. I read that Harrison Ford and George Lucas are going to present him. So that's even more cool. So good for Mark.
Yeah, I didn't know he didn't have one.
For being in The Last Jedi, he ought to get a fucking award.
Yeah. I didn't know he didn't have one.
Nope.
So that was interesting. I saw your comment on that, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I wonder if he's getting that because, he did apologize for speaking his mind. And
yes, God forbid.
Even though he was 100% correct. One of the comments I saw on the 111 episode was someone said they liked the premise of the broken hero. Although they needed a better kind of setup for that. But the way it was handled in the delivery was pretty bad.
Which is actually not a bad thought. I mean, it's not a bad idea, really. I would have actually been curious to see that. If this new trilogy actually had started out with something like a broken Luke Skywalker having, I don't know, maybe like he really tried to establish and bring peace back to the galaxy, and instead it just didn't work out that way for whatever reason. So maybe, he did go into hiding, and this was about trying to re-inspire him to be the hero that he once was.
Yeah. Well, I don't find that too dissimilar to like post-World War I Europe, where you had the Weimar Republic in Germany replacing the German Empire. You had this desire for democracy, and less than 20 years later, it's a failure because you have the rise of dictatorships in Germany and in Italy. You have the expansion of the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe. And you also had the Spanish Revolution, which, was it Marco that came to power? So you had this rise of tyranny. And it's really, the Soviet Union ended up being our allies, but you had rise of tyranny there. You look at what happens in post-World War I, Soviet Russia, and the purges of Lenin and Stalin, and you get the same kind of thing in the setup of the Nazi Germany. You have the invasion into Poland by both the Russians and the Germans, and they split up basically Eastern Europe, and where they were allies for a while until they got a little greedy and invaded Soviet Union. So, to me, those are all just versions of the same song and dance. They're not left wing, right wing. They're all tyrannies. So I can understand setting up.
Yeah, they're all assholes.
Yeah. It's just it all leads to lots of death and destruction. Look at Venezuela, So
That is real communism, by the way, people.
Oh yeah.
Kid ourselves.
This this part of why the people are only rioting because they don't have any weapons to go against the 10% of the country that still has weapons to protect themselves. Although if the 90%, I mean, they could probably do something, but they'd have horrendous losses. But I like their post. I forget who it was, but the idea of trying to establish something and it fails, it has to be better than the setup in the Force Awakens where Luke just vanishes. I think you need this, in which case you had a way to set that up by actually having a movie, show us that attempt to come to terms. I mean, even just be a few minutes. I think if you look at the prologue that's in the Fellowship of the Ring, at the start of the Lord of the Rings movies, and you get a little bit of that in each movie, but you do have the narration by what's her name, but you also see
Galadriel.
Yeah, and Galadriel. I was trying to remember the actress's name, but you also see the betrayal, the temptation of the ring, and the betrayal. Right, you see what kind of sets up what's coming, and as well as the Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett. What things that should not have been forgotten were, that type of thing. You could set that up over time a little bit and have the destruction. You don't have to have it necessarily as a flashback. Show us that as an epilogue into the new trilogy, and part of that. But the whole point was, yes, you have the broken hero, but they left him broken. You have with Han Solo, the same thing, right? He goes back to being what he was before. Break him down and destroy him. Right.
Yep.
So there is no attempt. So you have that setup, but there's no attempt at redemption. And in some ways, you could say that Kenobi in the first movie was a little bit that way, where he was, he was a bit of a hermit. He's seen as a crazy old man. The Force itself has become a religion. You even have that with, or the idea is that it's religion. You get that from Han Solo saying, he's never seen anything. He's been all over this galaxy, never seen anything that said, any all-powerful something was in control of everything.
Controlling his destiny.
Right. Yeah. Right. There's no mystic force that controls my destiny. And then you also have on one of Vader's, the guy starts choking. It says, "Your sad devotion to an ancient religion," blah, blah, blah. So you have this concept of a broken world that's being overrun by evil. And you do have somewhat of a broken hero in Kenobi who does a noble sacrifice and disappears before he... and that was... In the original movie, it's more evident in the novel because you get, obviously, the internal dialogue. But if you notice in the movie, Vader steps on the cloak and he's looking for the body. And he's actually disturbed that there's no body there. So...
because in essence, he really didn't kill him. Kenobi chose to become one with the Force.
Right.
Yep.
And that's why he stands there, and then as Vader strikes, he's disappearing. So, and that is what they have Luke do with his astral projection and all that other nonsense in The Last Jedi, but it doesn't fully work because you don't have a hero that's taken his place.
It's called bad writing.
Well, it's not just bad writing. It's a feminist agenda. It's not just the bad writing.
Big time.
If it was just bad writing, that'd be one thing. But when you have bad writing, and on top of that, an agenda. No, someone else made a comment about you have to know the nihilistic and neo postmodernism. No, I said philosophies in my response. I think they were saying psychologies. Well, I do understand those, and you do have hints of that, but it's very poorly done. But this is why you have 3 stories that. People were complaining at the end of it, they were right back where they started, and that is a nihilistic approach, that nothing matters.
Wait, so this is like some bogus Rick and Morty shit or something like that these people want?
Well, what I don't fully know, because I can't crawl into the head of Rian Johnson, as people like to call him, and
You
almost
wouldn't want to either.
it feels accidental because of the agenda behind the movies. And I actually was watching a video the other day where the guy was saying if he wondered if Ryan was trolling Disney. If you wanted to destroy a franchise, how would you do it? And this guy starts, explaining all the things he would have done in a Star Wars movie, and it's exactly what Rian Johnson did.
Coincidentally, I believe.
Right.
On that subject, I was reading the specs for the for the Blu-ray release next month. I'm a big fan of audio commentaries. I cannot wait to listen to that piece of shit try to defend that movie. I want to pop a beer. I'm gonna have a nice fucking hamburger. I cannot wait to hear this guy's excuses. It's going to be entertaining.
Right, and I'm hoping if there's such of commentary on the Blu-ray that it becomes evident whether by the way he's speaking and how he's describing stuff is this a post-construction defense, or was it meant to be all along? When the reason I say this is when I first saw The Fellowship of the Ring, having been a fan of the Lord of the Rings books for 25 years, I was pissed off after I saw the first movie. I was ready to wring Peter Jackson's neck through his butt, and I had reread the books again, and there was, I was beside myself. I was just a babbling nerd. And when the extended editions came out, and I bought them on DVD, and I watched them, I'm like, okay, this is a better movie. And then when I listened to the commentaries, and there was so much information that Peter Jackson and I think it was, is it Pippa
Fran Walsh, I think.
Yeah, but it was because it was his current wife and his ex-wife is who he worked with, which is very interesting. But the three of them, there was so much setup, and there was also some side commentaries that I watched that went through all of the bits and pieces of how long it took them to actually get that movie made. I understood all of the things they did was well planned in advance. It wasn't an accident. And why they changed certain aspects. Now I know Christopher Tolkien got a little pissy that they did go further and further away from the source material. But this is why I describe that trilogy as what you do when you have someone who loves the source material and you get out of their way and let them create something, because you can't just go page by page, because the book is written as literature and it's far different than the movie concept of how you put movies together. And then The Hobbit is what happens when the studio, MGM in this case, they got to have their trilogy and they add a bunch of crap. And I actually watched the first one, and the first one wasn't bad, but it's pretty close to the book. But they're like a little over halfway there by the end of the first movie. And so if it was two movies, I think it works a lot better. Now, I know they added some stuff because some of that stuff was in Tolkien's notes. He wanted to rewrite The Hobbit after the fact because it started as a kid's book. And he started to kind of have a darker thing. But in the first one, you only have a couple extra characters. You don't have... what's her name's character, Evangeline Lilly's character, that was created by the studio because they needed a girl, or thought they did. You don't have, golly, what's his nuts? I'll think of it eventually. But he's also over in the pirate movies.
Johnny Depp? No, not him.
Oh, no, talking about Legolas.
Yeah, Legolas. Why he shows up. Right. But they what I like is they have a good... It starts really right before the Fellowship of the Ring. Frodo runs... they're planning the birthday party. Bilbo starts his book and is kind of having a flashback, and Frodo goes to wait for Gandalf. I like that they did that to really tie it in how they did that first movie. It's pretty interesting. Because that's how it is in the books. That, I think it's he does something, and Bilbo starts writing his book, and he gives it to Frodo, and then I think it's like 11 or 12 years between when Gandalf leaves and he comes back. Now in the movie, they kind of make it a few months because that's just too long. But anyway, I digress. So it'll be interesting to see, because so far of what I've seen of the defenses of TLJ, they all sound after the fact creations. They don't sound like the plan was other than to kind of, I don't know, maybe it was planned to go in just one big circle, and that's exactly what they did. And
problem is they didn't map out a trilogy.
No.
They sat down and said, you take episode 7, you take 8, you take 9. Make your own movie. Here are all those story points. Have fun. Because Rian Johnson destroyed everything J.J. Abrams had set up.
Right.
That was not planned. And that goes back to Kathleen Kennedy and her shitty leadership.
Right. As long as the original heroes, male heroes, are belittled, mission accomplished. That's all. That's the only thing she apparently wants out of this.
All I can say is, good luck with killing that spider, Catherine. Shit, strong independent female, my ass.
Yeah.
And did you hear? I read an article out here on. I don't think it was on LATimes.com or where I saw the article from, but there's rumors about her possibly taking over for Bob Iger as the head of Disney. He retires in 2021.
Oh, God, no.
There's rumors that she's positioning herself to take that because of all her connections and...
Jesus, there's going to be a lot of flu going around.
Can you imagine that?
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe after like maybe after an entire bottle of tequila or 8 of them, I don't know how much to take. I don't know what's legal intoxication here in Mexico, but maybe after illegal intoxication, yeah, she'll probably look attractive enough for a blowjob or something. But god damn, oh, can you imagine Disney under her leadership? Jesus. If we thought things were bad now, imagine someone that puts agenda first, and even as so much as questioning it, you will see yourself out that door and getting blacklisted.
Shit going on, that would be great. That would be a great.
Uh-oh. Eric, you're breaking up.
Great, the Illuminati got to him again. Wait, that's my job. The fuck? Get your act together, Illuminati.
Dude, it could happen. Don't think it couldn't.
I guess we're the only ones that are going to go to space.
Yep.
Damn it. He's about to speak the truth.
So this is good positive news.
Yeah, Forbes magazine online has an article about, they do mention Kathleen, but they kind of saying, yeah, she's not a good candidate. They talk about Anne Sweeney, former CFO Jay Rossulo. I don't know. It's it's just becoming a self-feeding something now. One of the dogs is whining. Quiet, doggies. Anyway, so moving on. Let's get moving on. So I did have a few things of news. So one of them is I found an article talking about Star Trek Discovery, STD, our favorite STD to talk about, and how this first season was confusing and deeply unsatisfying. It's very interesting.
Hard to imagine.
Right. It's very interesting because it talks about the optimism of the original Star Trek, but then goes into paragraph after paragraph to denigrate the white maleness of the original series.
Of course.
And the Next Generation. And, even though there was a diverse cast, most of the stories only went around the main three: DeForest Kelley, Leonard Nimoy, and William Shatner. And I'm like, they were the biggest stars of the series. Two of those
were the best. They were the best characters.
Well, they were, and then there, and there was sexism and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, okay, and how that STD started to not, went away from that, started with that in mind, and yet was boring and preachy, and the episode, it wasn't episodic like it should have been. The positivity was missing, and I'm like, okay, which way are you going to cut this onion, author? You talk about the positivity of the original series, which is true. I mean, that was Roddenberry's thing was, no, we didn't have a need for money. We didn't have need. We didn't have greed. We just, lived to explore and to learn. This is why he had a Russian...
Better humanity.
Right. And his bridge crew was a cross-section of the world, right? You had an African princess. You had a Russian guy. In the middle of the Cold War.
A Scottish guy.
Right. Right, and who wasn't, the stereotypical Scottish drunk all the time, right? He got him out
Sulu, who piloted the ship.
Right, and of course a Vulcan who, So that's part of the thing too, is they don't say that that one was played by a white guy, but he was an alien, right? He wasn't human. They kind of missed that whole point. But I do have, and then apparently their female captain they killed off halfway through, which I didn't know.
Good. Die. Fucking bitch.
Well, I'm like, but we had the Next Generation was a bit more diverse, and then you had a female captain in Voyager,
Janeway.
who I didn't really like that character. She
was a cunt. I hated Janeway.
Yeah, she just seemed too.
Just a bitch.
Too sharp, just to be sharp.
And before anybody accuses me of being a sexist or a racist, I liked Benjamin Sisko on Deep Space Nine as the first black captain. He was fucking cool. That was a great show.
Right. Have you ever seen interviews where people ask him, what was it like to be the first black captain on? He's like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
how do
yeah, exactly.
It's like he takes it as an insult. How do I play black?
Yeah.
I'm just a character. I'm just a captain who happens to be black, but I can't play black.
I'm an actor.
He is one crazy cat. I will say that. But
Avery Brooks is fucking crazy, man. I don't know what happened to him, man, but he's fucking whacked.
Yeah, but in a good way.
Yeah, and he's always been a good actor. I remember watching him on Spencer for Hire back in the 80s.
Yep.
He was cool as hell, man.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was him because I didn't really get into that show much, but I remember being around, and I was like into second or third season of Deep Space Nine, and someone told me that, and I was like, what? And then because he was bald, and then I went and looked, and oh my gosh, it is him.
He played Hawk. He was badass, man.
Yeah. See, I didn't really get into MacGyver either back then. Those shows were aimed at. It was kind of like the A-Team. When I was a teenager, it was great. By the time I was in college and they were reruns, it was
not so great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, so I thought that was interesting.
And also with Discovery too, I want to add, and also being lead.
He's going through the canyons again.
Yeah.
Canyon.
Yeah, Eric, you're gonna have to start all over again, man. You're breaking up.
I've only seen the first episode of Discovery, but I didn't like the actress they cast as Michael, the main character. That girl from The Walking Dead.
Right.
So, that's how to do with any role. You can have a very well-written role, but if you cast the wrong actor, it's not going to work.
That is true.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing with the Janeway character. They had some other, I think she was French actress.
Yep.
And I've seen the test screens, and I'm like, oh, she's even worse. She's really too stiff. It was just like,
You know who would have been cool back in the day to play Janeway? Would have been Linda Hamilton. She'd have been cool.
Yeah, because the Linda Hamilton now is just.
Yeah, now, no.
Yeah.
Back in the day, man, she still looked good. She was strong, but she still had a feminine side about her. She'd have been really cool.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. That would have been an interesting comparison. Because what was missing from the Janeway character was a softer speak, like the
She
strong.
was just cold, man.
Right. The strong backbone was fine, but the real harsh tone was the problem.
Mm.
You
But I'll
know.
tell you what, though, man. Watching 7 and 9's tits every week, man.
She came out what, season 3? I think 2 or
Yeah,
3.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
The Voyager sucked until 7 and 9 came on. Then it got pretty cool. The Borg and stuff and all that.
It almost got it almost got canceled, I think, and because my biggest problem with bringing in 7 and 9 was I didn't want the Borg. I didn't want the same boogeymen from the other series. And I think they could have ended it better. I know I've discussed this before. But
I didn't like how it ended.
But Braga and Berman they're time loop fanatics, and
Especially Braga.
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, look what they did with Enterprise. I mean, every
Enterprise,
season was a time
no.
loop, right? Hell, it's end of season. Let's hit the reset button again. Yeah, it's because I think they could have ended it similarly, but instead of a time loop, remember the Borgs that they freed, who were running around, and then the Queen was blowing up some of the cubes and spheres, but some of them escaped. I think if you had them find each other and come up with those super weapons, and then pretty much do the rest of it the same way. They show up, they ally with Voyager. Some of them sacrifice themselves to, destroy the Queen's hold less than destroy the entire Matrix, and then have the same thing. Have a sphere capture Voyager, and they end up in the Alpha Quadrant near Earth, and they blow it up from the inside with the special weapens. I think you don't have to have this stupid time loop nonsense. I mean, they already
to me,
have,
it was
it
was like a cheap ripoff of All Good Things.
Yeah. Well, that was more flashbackish in some ways, but yeah.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like a side parallel universe ending. Well, that was to bookmark the start of it with Q, where he puts humanity on trial, and at the end he kind of.
I love Q. He's awesome.
And he was only in like a dozen episodes.
Yeah, he was in obviously the pilot. He was in the finale, and then he usually was in one episode a season.
Yeah. So that was
And it's
good.
a shame. And it's a shame they never put him in one movie. Not even one.
Yeah.
He would have been great.
Well, that Wesley Crusher barely made it in.
Yeah.
Because
He sucks anymore.
Well, and he wasn't much of an actor, but
Well, Wesley sucks.
he, I guess he found out that was going to be the last Star Trek, and I think it was who's there that plays Geordi? LeVar Burton got him in that little quip, that short little scene.
Yep.
And that was mainly because the producers,
reception.
the producer didn't like him anymore because the way he bailed on the series. So.
Yeah, that's worked out well for him, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, look at Denise Crosby.
Yeah. Yeah, she fucked up.
She said she didn't want to just, stand there and say yes, Captain, for 7 years. And I'm like, you're a supporting character. That's what you're gonna do.
It's called syndication, lady. Syndication.
Yeah.
You stupid bitch.
Wait a sec, are you for real?
Huh?
Are you for real about that? Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
never
what she
watched this
said.
thing.
Yeah.
No, that's what she
She
said.
left in the first season. She wanted to leave. There wasn't enough episodes for her. Like, bitch, you're the security chief. Who cares?
And it's the first
Oh,
season.
shit.
I mean,
It's the
that
first season.
Next Generation took really 2 or 3 seasons to really get moving. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it
liked
didn't.
it from the
It didn't
beginning.
get good until the third season when Michael Piller came on and brought the Borg in and stuff.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And it was, that opened the door for Michael Dorn, who
Yeah.
said,
Worf.
okay, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity, and he made Worf into the character
Worf
he was.
Worf was awesome, man.
All right, that is 85-90% Michael Dorn in that character. He apparently, the bat lift, that thing that he had as a weapon, he devised a fighting technique for it. He basically was there and showed up and put in the effort, and that's how he got more episodes and the like. Hold on, you guys keep talking.
He saved DS9 because DS9 the first couple seasons they were not doing well ratings wise, and once they brought in Worf, man, it turned into a fucking kick-ass show.
Yeah, I part of the problem with DS9. The whole concept, I mean, I was calling it Deep Throat 9 from the start. I know that Jonathan Frakes apparently calls it that because I've seen enough videos where Marina Sirtis has been talking about it at conventions. So that's what I called it before it even came on the air. And I thought,
back in the day, man, she was a nice piece of ass.
And that, and what's funny about on The Next Generation, I hated her character more than anything. It was like this character was horrible, and I don't know if it was the character or the actress, but I was like,
she just didn't do anything.
Right? I sensed
Nothing
something,
to do.
Captain. Right? I sensed that he's lying, Captain. I just, Picard didn't need
I
it.
like seeing her tits bounce around, but
Yeah.
besides that
was mostly the stuffed underwear back then. But yeah, and then I've seen her at conventions, and I'm beginning to think 2/3 of the problem with that character was her, because she's a really, I don't have a word to describe her. She's really a not nice person, and a bit of a lunatic.
She's probably pissed off because she didn't get enough airtime.
I don't know, but yeah, I remember when Denise left, and I actually liked Tasha as a character, and I liked
Tasha
Denise.
was cool, man.
Yeah. And it was a shame that she left. They brought her back for a couple other smaller characters here and there, and she
came back as that Romulan.
Yeah, because that was Tomorrow's Enterprise, or the one that came through the time rift and then they had to send it back through.
Yeah, she was Tasha's daughter.
Right. Well, no, in the one where there's an Enterprise C, I think, comes through a time rift, and then Tasha's alive, and then she goes back with this Enterprise, and then gets captured by the Romulans, and then she plays her own half Romulan.
Her name
half
was,
human.
I think her name was Sela, I think.
Yeah.
Character's name.
And I like, too, how in the last episode, they not only bookmarked it with Q, but they also bookmarked it with her when she brought Picard onto the Enterprise, and I liked how that series ended. I mean, obviously, Enterprise was just canceled, but it was going down in flames, and we already talked about the Voyager ending, and by the time Deep Throat 9 got around to finishing, I wasn't watching it anymore. I was over it and the Dominion, and it's like the whole reason why I didn't think that series was going to last, because you just had a space station and it was not going to go anywhere. Babylon 5 did that, and it did it right. And
Babylon 5 helped push DS9 to get better because it had to.
And then even Babylon 5 was supposed to be 5 years and got its 5th year canceled and then brought back on another network. So,
there's a writer named Ira Stephen Bear. He had a lot to do with the success of DS9. He wrote some really good episodes, and the show got really good the last 2 or 3. I should say last 3 or 4 seasons, because they brought in a lot of good writing. You had the Dominion War, but they had a lot of cool character pieces with the Bajorans, and just it got to be a good show. But it took a couple of years for it to find its legs. Same with Next Generation.
Right. Well, I may have to figure out where I stop watching and either watch it on streaming or get the DVDs or something, because I stopped watching long before Terry left. She left, and so they killed her version of Dax, the host, off, and they had another host. Yeah, because I was watching, it was a couple of years ago, but I was watching Avery Brooks and a couple other people from DS9. I'm like, who in the world are these people? I don't remember, and I have to look them up, and they were in seasons I didn't watch.
Yep.
So.
And they also got a lot more to the Ferengi, which, I love because that shit's just hilarious.
Yeah.
The Grand Nagus.
Yeah.
You remember his brother? Quark's brother,
Yes.
he becomes the Grand Nagus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Nam.
funny.
I think it was Nam, I forget his name.
Yeah, those two guys. Well, I know it was Nam. I think it was the guy that there was another Ferengi on there too.
It was Rom. That was it.
Rom, yeah. And those two guys at one of the Star Trek conventions, they were at the DS9 panel. It was a small mini panel. It was them and I think the guy who played Odo. There was like 4 of them, and they're pretty short. And they were in character though. And so what was funny is
awesome.
They started they had all the full makeup and the prosthetics and everything, and they were talking normally, and then about halfway through they just started answering questions in character. It was hilarious. So
And he's like, "What the fuck, you Star Trek nerd motherfucker!"
I was afraid we weren't going to have enough to talk about. We've been at this half an hour already.
Oh, dude, I could talk about Trek for hours, man. I love Trek.
All right. So one of the other things I had for news is an article I came across. It was 9 things that happened in pop culture 10 years ago this week. Most of it I could care nothing about. You have the Twilight movie saga began. You
What?
have, yep,
Wait,
10 years,
before you
2008.
continue, Wait. What was this list again? There's 9 things. Like,
It's 8 pop culture moments from 2008 you won't believe happened 10 years ago. And this is from February 23rd.
We're lowered the bar, haven't we?
Hey, I said I didn't care about most of these. Britney Spears makes a comeback. Okay, whatever. Twilight movies. And Eric's on mute. That's okay. We got you, Eric. We have Beyonce and Jay-Z tie the knot. Don't care. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt welcome twins. Sex and the City, the movie, hits theaters. Don't care. Miley Cyrus, I don't care. But the one I care about and why I'm even bringing it up. One is High School Musical 3 sings its way into the silver screen. Blah, 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 blah. And at the very bottom of the list, last but surely not least, the only one I really care about, Heath Ledger's posthumous Dark Knight performance.
Oh, you see, Batman, sometimes you really have to get crazy. And sometimes I'm just crazy about you. In a gay way, of course.
In a Brokeback Mountain kind of way, right?
Well, it's funny how Heath Ledger will probably be best remembered for both those films. And obviously his death, but make that what you will. Make that what you will.
Yeah, I liked his performance. I think it was the best performance of Joker since Jack Nicholson in the Keaton Batman. Was that Batman '89?
Yeah.
I mean, Cesar Romero. Was it Cesar Romero? His performance was good. So how is he typing? But we can't. He's not talking. Because I don't even have Facebook open, so the Messenger stuff is just going on, just binging on me. But I liked that they each gave. It's like they had some essence of the original character, and they each gave their own piece. He's at Chipotle on mute. Okay.
Yeah, I told him to stop eating there already. He's not gonna listen.
And in other news, in Franklin Regional High School in Murraysville, which I don't know, it's near Pittsburgh, 24 injured in stabbing. So we need to ban knives now.
All right, where's the press in this?
Let's be consistent.
I know. Honestly, I never wanted to get all political with this recent. Fuck it. Why are we even calling it recent at this point? Or even calling it a gun problem? Let's just call it what it is. It's a societal problem. It's not even a gun problem. Society. Things are just. I don't know. I mean, if I were to list everything I think is wrong with society right now, at that point, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said, the hell with it, and actually did go crazy enough and start doing something stupid like this on a regular basis. Make it seem like it's, just regular whack jobs, when in reality, I think there's just too many factors going on that almost pushing the button for it to happen.
Yeah. No, I think it's societal. This is what we're seeing are the symptoms of a societal collapse. We don't have a moral compass anymore. We kicked any kind of semblance of philosophies that are non-humanistic. I mean, call it religion if you want, but we've just replaced it with a humanistic religion. We have cultural Marxism running the show. You have 3 generations now of, I mean, myself included, that have been taught this stuff, and it's finally infected at the lowest levels, and we're just seeing more and more of it. In many ways, I think it's like somewhat, it's not a full coincidence, especially with the mass shootings, that they're always Democrats or registered Democrat voters or the children of registered Democrats, because that's where the cultural Marxism lives. And so if you really adhere to that philosophy, you're going to be voting for that philosophy. And so it makes sense, because the cultural Marxism really is mental illness. It really, Michael Savage said it years and years and years ago, and I would say it's not liberal. We call it liberalism, but it's not liberalism. Cultural Marxism is not liberty-oriented at all. And so it's really, we need to call it what it is, and that is cultural Marxism. The liberals are what Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and James Madison were, not what these people want to call themselves nowadays. And it's an infection, and it's gonna, it's just only going to get worse unless we start correcting it and start dealing with the disease and not the symptoms.
So, did you know Thomas Paine on a first name basis, or what?
No. And see, people talk about common sense. Well, Thomas Paine and Jefferson and Franklin and a few others wrote, many of them anonymously, the common sense, articles when they were really trying to educate the American, the colonials about, the constitutional republic they wanted to create. So this is before the revolution and even during the revolution. And the whole point is that concept of freedom, and that the governed are the ones in control and not the government, and the moral fiber it takes to, and Thomas Paine was an atheist, so it doesn't necessarily take someone who is religious in per se. It takes just a well-defined moral compass. And Jefferson was he was somewhat of a deist. I know people that say that the founding fathers were deists. Well, like 2 or 3 of them were. Most of them were what we, some version of a Christian denomination. Many of them ministers. And, but you have to have that moral fiber. Was it Madison? Was it, one of them said that the Constitution was written for a moral society. I forget.
Yeah,
I forget.
yeah.
May have been. Well, I don't think it was Madison. I thought it was. Adams. But. But anyway, my whole point of this rant is that common sense has never been common. People apparently for too long, and this is probably because of the history of the world. For thousands of years, man was basically told what to do, and so people are more comfortable in being told what to do and not coming up with their own ideas. This is why, even as tyrannical as a king or as a monarchy might be, you had loyalists to the crown, not only in the American Revolution, but all over the world. And people wanted to adhere, and it wasn't. Yes, the aristocracy wanted to maintain control because that was their, how they were making their money and their living. But it's amazing how often the peasant who's being, wandering around in mud and crap will defend the crown because they don't have to make a decision.
I mean, in all seriousness, we was talking about the whole Venezuela thing earlier, just as a light commentary. I mean, you have people in Venezuela that still support that whole communism thing, despite seeing the consequences of all its actions full view in front of their own eyes. It's this whole notion that you have people in the world that are basically sheep. Like they basically will follow anything as long as they're in with a crowd, as long as they feel they're part of something else. It's this whole thing where, for some reason, society now wants to create. I won't say a unity, but I would say more of like a following, where people have to belong to something, if not everything. Again,
People want to be part of a clique.
yeah, like part of a clique. Like exactly. Like it's this weird notion that we have to allow inclusivity in everything. And listen, inclusivity really shouldn't be something that you just give out to people and just expect it to, include anybody and anything. No, people have to be interested in something for them to be, first of all, to be considered to be inclusive into something, and then invest themselves in it. For example, if you like something, we've bitched about it so many times about Star Wars. I keep saying it. I don't understand why all of a sudden everybody wants to be a Star Wars fan when you had ample opportunity prior to these last couple movies to be one. It's just
people are fucking stupid. That's why.
Exactly. No, and it became is that because it was now the marketed and the popular thing, and you want to be part of the trend, that all of a sudden you want to wear these dumb Forces female feminist T-shirts, which honestly probably won't get you laid at all. Period. You're probably better off, I don't know, doing something more badass with your life and probably getting more pussy that way than you ever would wearing the dumb pussy hat to begin with. I don't even know why I brought these up, but I felt like I just needed to throw it out there. But more so about...
Hey, LMP, there's a great...
No, go ahead.
There's a really cool old... what was that?
I thought he was dying on me again. The connection looked like it was...
Oh, no. I was going to say, there's a great old Pink Floyd album called Animals. There's a song on it called Sheep. Listen to it. Tell you all you need to know.
I will. I definitely will. We'll put that on my recommended after this we done with the episode. But going back
to... It's a great album, but the song Sheep, man...
I'll put on some headphones. I'll do some cleaning here and listen to it. Believe me. And no, that isn't for pay, by the way, if anybody's asking. But, ladies and gentlemen, those jokes will never die on this channel. But it's this thing. Have you noticed, like, especially with a lot of these shooters, don't a lot of them look like if it wasn't for the shooting, if it wasn't for them holding the gun or something like that, don't a lot of them look like they could have passed for betas?
Oh yeah. That's...
And did you hear about the deputy that resigned?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
There was a deputy. They found through investigations of looking at footage, there was a deputy that did not go inside. He was at one of the doors and he stayed there. Yeah. He did not go inside.
Assigned to the school, he did not. But he did coordinate the creating a perimeter and all that other stuff. But
he didn't go inside.
Right.
So he just like stood out there while all this was going on.
Well, yeah, we'll see. This is where I we can say all we want, and I know people will point to England and Australia and all these other places where they've banned guns, and then the personal assault rates have gone skyrocketing.
Yeah,
even in all these countries.
They far outnumber ours. Their violent crimes are through the roof. Right. They just don't have guns. They do other shit.
Well, in Australia they do have guns. The criminals do.
Exactly.
Because they know that none of their victims do, and it's gone up. I forget all the numbers, but I did come across. It was an article purported to be written by an Australian policeman, but I started cross-checking some of the numbers, and I was astounded. I know that in England, it had assault had gone way up.
Yeah.
And then we had a shooting I thought it was in Denmark. It was some country. It was a Scandinavian country a few years ago where guns had been outlawed for a long time, and someone got a hold of one and was, it was a rifle, and they were picking off people in the camp. There was some kind of enclave camp that they were shooting into. And what drives me the most nuts is after 9/11, we without any government action, the airlines trained a lot, if not all, of their personnel in weapons and how to use weapons. They at least announced they did. Now, how much of it I don't know. I know some pilots. I could ask them. They reinforced by decree. The government said they had to reinforce the door. They put air marshals on board, and they stopped. A few attempted and potential hijackers were stopped along the way, and then we've had nothing since then. And yet, things like nightclubs or schools or other things, we can't put anybody armed. I was listening, I haven't listened to Limbaugh in a long time, but I was driving around when he was, his radio show was on the day, and I just happened to catch a part with this guy. I forget where he was calling from, but he's on a city council, and there's the police for this county was in the city hall, and they run out of space. So what they did, apparently several years ago, is they used extra space in various schools and have actual mini police stations, if you will, that are staffed, and they've had no problems with it. You will find in some malls, even around here, there are police departments in the mall. They're not mall cops. They are Hamilton County police stations. And
we have in New York City too, where you actually have police stations within the subway system.
Yeah.
And usually around those areas, in those parts of the police stations, you'll notice how people tend to act more in line.
Yep.
And more and behave themselves. Whereas in the more smaller localized stations, and let's call it what it is, ladies and gentlemen, the ghetto stations. And this is me talking. This isn't just me reiterating something that other people have said. This is me firsthand experiences. I've been a child. You'll notice how these are like the most rundown, crime-ridden, graffiti-infested type of stations out there. So there is some truth to this. There is a lot of truth to this.
Yeah. So it's, again, as LMP and I were saying before, my son and daughter's high school, they have I don't know for how many years, but the entire time they were there, they've had there's a woman police officer who's there all day in the office, and because one is the county sheriff and the other one is Coleraine Township, I think. And then there's a guy that shows up just to do traffic. There's actually two of them that show up to do traffic at the high school because of the changes in busing and stuff. There's so many parents that pick up and drop off kids. But it's the same then, because the way that the times of the middle school and the elementary school, those two that are directing traffic actually just travel around to the other. So they're in the morning and then they're in the afternoon. The first time I went, one of them forgot their lunch, and I didn't know it. I go into the high school office, and there's an armed police officer in uniform there. And I'm like, oh, okay. I lived on an army base for most of my high school, and that was guarded. Now the high school wasn't guarded, but we'd have terrorist crap would happen, and then we'd have MPs stationed outside of the high school for a few weeks just to make sure nothing was going to go on. People drive trucks and vans and other things. It's not just necessarily someone showing up with a gun or a box cutter or a knife or whatever. So, but it's a systemic problem in society. And I know there's probably 100 different, there's people say, hey, we've removed God or we need this or that. But the main thing is we've questioned our morality to the point where we said morality is definable by the human. Every human can create their own morality, and so that's the problem.
I believe there was a channel. I'm trying to remember which YouTuber said something like that, like how we've come to a point where as long as science can explain it, it's no longer taboo.
Or pseudoscience. I mean, this whole point of gender fluidity and that there are more than two genders, that's not science.
It's not science. Listen, get over it, ladies and gentlemen. It's two genders. I don't care what you do. You cut your giblets, you install a fake dick. It's two genders.
Yeah, but
three if you were born with both of them. But
right.
What are the odds of that?
You do have hermaphrodites, and but even transgendered people will say there's only two. They just say they're the wrong one. But they're not going to say there's 47 of them, and
or pass a law saying there's 31 or 33 of them. Thank you.
It all reminds me, and this has been somewhere in the 90s. It's probably in the second or third season of South Park. It's probably that long ago, and I don't even remember what this problem this lady had, but she had like her unborn dead fetal twin.
The fetus
was attached to her, and they were making fun of this stuff at the beginning stages. Where basically she said, I was being accepted, but you've called so much attention to my problem that now everybody sees me for that. And she was very uncomfortable because everybody, they had, I think it was like something congenital joined twin day or something, and everybody was wearing the, prosthetic that made it look like they had the same problem she did to try and make her feel accepted. And she said, basically at the end of that episode, she feels less accepted because they've drawn so much attention to her problem.
It's crazy is that they actually I won't say they followed up with that particular character, but the similar concept, they followed up with it much, much later. I think the episode was called Death Camp of Intolerance, where they send the kids to an intolerance death camp, which was supposed to mimic the black and white Schindler's List style of the movies where you see the Jews in the ghettos and the concentration camps, because they were forced to learn tolerance, like how to accept people for the differences, all because Garrison had come out as openly gay, but he was really pushing the button of like his own, I guess, lifestyle choices so that he get fired. And because he wasn't getting fired, he kept doing the most absurd things. I remember, I think what was the thing that actually got the boys in trouble because they spoke out about it was when he shoved the gerbil up Mr. Slave's ass. And the kids really took offense to that. And the teacher even at the end of the episode said, listen, you people are just applauding my behavior when it really is reprehensible. I'm really doing this to try to get fired so I can sue you all for discrimination, but you people are just accepting it. There's not a problem with me. The problem is with you. And, he made all these great points, again, similar to about the conjoined fetus lady, how you're calling attention to it, and now I'm uncomfortable. He's basically somewhat saying the same thing. You guys are accepting this. You have no limits, no morals to what I'm doing. I'm a little uncomfortable with it now. And surprisingly, the twist is that instead of the town feeling guilty or saying, maybe we did fuck up, maybe we should start looking at him a little carefully, they threw it back at him and said, you know what, Garrison, you're intolerant of your own life choices. We got to send you to the death camp. Sure enough, the episode ends with the gerbil actually making out the gay man's ass and revealing that he actually is, I think, what was it, the gerbil king or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't see that one, I don't think. But no, that gets to other things we've talked about before too. Even when Stalin and his purges, where he, the people doing the purges were the next ones, and the next purge they were gone.
Exactly. So. It's. I mean, honestly, I don't want to take too much time with the discussion, but I'm going to bring another point up. Not just so much that we're hearing the whole gun debate thing, but just to bring a little attention to it. If you people want to have a little fun with it, YouTube this name. And I want you to ask yourself afterwards, why was there no press coverage of this individual? Look up the name. I don't know if you've already looked, if you might be familiar with this one, Brian, but look up the name Randy Stair. Okay? Gun-related deaths in this one, but I want you to ask yourself, where was the national press in this? And you'll start to notice that the press is really picking and choosing which shootings will get coverage based on what circumstances and just how they can twist the narratives. In this particular one, I believe I think this example with Randy Stair, and why I bring this up is because not only did I not hear this about this getting any national coverage, where were the police, where were the FBI and everything trying to analyze what went wrong and everything, but because it really is an open and shut case of what was wrong there and why this individual did what he did. Now, I think the other thing also has to do with the kill count, but if you YouTube his name, you'll see a video by with 4chan comments attached to why he probably never got the attention he so desperately wanted. But ladies and gentlemen, feel free to YouTube that name and feel free to either hate me or throw insults my way the next episode.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't hear about this one. Yeah, he killed himself as well as 3 coworkers. 1
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning, sent out links and videos via his Twitter account labeled, suicide tapes, journal, and so forth. Well, even this guy in Florida, the sheriff and the FBI had multiple reports that there was a problem, and they didn't do crap.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not saying that we have to go to draconian laws or tyranny type of thing, but if there is an individual that is already showing signs that he's a danger, maybe they should at least try to figure out something, not just, okay, we'll just take the wait and see approach. There are times where you need to wait and see, and then there are other times like, listen, if this guy should not be holding a gun, or probably we should keep an eye on him in case if he starts showing interest in certain things.
Yeah.
Like this isn't going to be the first time this happens. It's not going to be the last. But people need to get off this whole let's ban gun things, because let's put it like this: society knows what guns are. You want to ban the guns? Okay, so they're gonna stop. They're gonna stop a couple shootings, but eventually, but there are a lot of illegal guns out there. How are you gonna confiscate those? How are you gonna confiscate guns from criminals? How are you gonna confiscate them from gangs? How are you gonna confiscate them from people that wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger the moment they see any type of law enforcement or military? Those are the people that you should be worried about with the guns.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that know what they're doing and don't care, and they're going to do it anyways. So,
well, this gets to the whole point. It's a societal problem.
Exactly.
I don't see any difference with, because to me it's all the same mental illness, whether these are Islamic terrorists or just some crazed nutbag that wants to take as many people out. And you can blame it on the way we sensationalize these different, although they pick and choose, and maybe they want the attention. I mean, that's part of it, but that's still part of a sick society. And so it doesn't, because actually when I posted my thing about band knives now, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek on the one here in near Pittsburgh, where no one was killed, but people are injured, and people are like, well, do you notice the difference? No one's killed. No, to me, it's the exact same societal problem. It doesn't matter to me if it's someone with a gun, with a knife, with, they get in a delivery truck and they go barreling down a crowd, and whether nobody gets killed or not is immaterial. Their whole point is they want to harm and injure as many people as possible, and it's a societal issue. It's not the mechanism that they utilize. We had things in Paris, we had things in New York, where people have driven. Now, granted, we also get the old lady who gets, or old man who is, gets confused and they mow down 6 people and maybe they kill a couple, but that wasn't their intention, and I understand that. That does happen. But
it's life,
when these people know exactly what they're doing, and but to me, it just gets back to the infestation of the culture of Marxism, the culture of humanism, whatever title you want to give it. Basically, it's the removal of any kind of moral compass. It's the thought of that life has no value, whether it's theirs or someone else's. We have a very similar problem with, in my view, it's just kind of a turn of the same coin with a lot of veterans who are killing themselves and things like that, where they believe that now granted, the way they got there is a little bit different, but to me it feels like a very similar psychosis. And that, to me, is the problem that we need to address. If we never we're only addressing the symptoms. You can ban guns all you want. Great. We'll go the way of England and other countries that have done the same thing, and we'll see a huge rise in assaults. You'll see assaults in places where we never saw them before. You could melt down every gun on the entire planet, and this is what you're going to. People will pick up rocks and sticks, and people will still kill each other. So in many ways, someone could say this has been going on for thousands of years, and yes, in some ways it has. But previously, we had gang warfare in the 19th century in New York. Heck, we've made movies about it. I remember many years ago, a preacher, I don't even remember which preacher, but I remember him reading a newspaper article that was talking about drive-by shootings. Well, not drive-by, but ride-by shootings. These were kids in New York that were shooting up, lamps and other things, and they were on horseback, right? So some of this is never has in some ways, but it's been on the fringes, and I think it's part of it is just getting more and more prevalent, and some of it may be the perception that it's more prevalent, because overall violence, especially gun violence, has been in decline for like 20 years. And when you look at the statistics, there have been improvements even in problems like Detroit and New York and Chicago. And there you have very, very, very strict gun control, and you have more problem. Now, what I've never seen is do the gun control laws come first or after as a response? I suspect it's as a response. I don't think they banned guns and then suddenly people were getting killed, but I don't know. But yeah, right. I didn't want to kind of derail our topic of pop culture with some of this, but what I just find interesting is people want to deal with the symptoms. In many ways, it's almost like systematic to Western medicine. We so often deal with the symptom. We don't deal with the disease. We don't deal with the underlying cause of the problem. And we would rather just take a piece, an aspirin or painkiller, but then you get people that'll take painkillers for the same problem for years, right? It's like, deal with the underlying issue. You may have to use painkillers to help deal with it, but if you never cure the underlying issue, it's just going to get worse. And to me, this is the exact same thing. We have an illness here. No one wants to deal with. No one wants to really, be serious about. They all want to grandstand and stand on top of the dead and say we need to ban this or ban that, and free speech or guns or whatever, and we end up with just the continuing malaise. So I'm done off my soapbox. We can move on to the next topic unless you got more you want to say.
Well, in relation to that, part of it is that people seem to have this notion where compromise is a bad thing. Like, they're not supposed to compromise. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's our problem here. Everybody wants to be the person that has all the answers, but nobody wants to actually listen or come to an agreement with other groups. Look, you can't ban the whole gun thing, but maybe there are some things that you can do to improve the situation. And like you said, there's a lot of symptoms out there. And in this particular one, there's just so much things that are here that are just not making any sense. It's not even where we're going into a conspiracy. This is just like, okay, so what information are you choosing to release to the public, and what information are you choosing to withhold? Because that information that you're withholding might actually have the key to what it actually happened here, and maybe might give us the answers we actually need.
Yeah.
So that's my whole gripe there. And I know people brought up Columbine. I believe that, the Columbine tapes, the tapes that were the public are not allowed to see. Like, well, okay, maybe I'm not saying that the whole world should know, but maybe if people need to actually see it to start investigating, maybe is there a societal thing here that needs to be fixed? Maybe they were trying to tell something to somebody. Maybe nobody just wanted to do something about it. Maybe they did have a cry for attention. And I read a book about by one of the I won't say survivors, because he wasn't at the school the day of the shooting, but he was one of the guys that actually had some beef with one of the bullies. I forgot which one of the two it was. He had problems with, but he was good friends with the other, I think. His name was Brooks Brown. I think the name of the book's called No Easy Answer. He gives his side of the story and how he felt, like what had happened and led up to that day. Basically, he was the guy that I forgot which one said to him, "I like you now, go home," and basically telling him, "I'm gonna do something terrible. Don't go to school today." So you hear that stuff. But the reason I really, actually, now that I thought about it, it was something that, as I won't say it was a big piece of news, but it was news again, and it's the video games lead to school shootings debate that we have been hearing for like the absolute longest. And
Well, it was the Three Stooges before then. The Three Stooges were blamed for, in violent cartoons, were blamed for violence in boys. And some of that is boys. And I know you can find all kinds of YouTube videos about people saying part of the reason why these are all males, too, is boys are not allowed to be boys. And the way the school system is. And Camille Paisley even talks about this, where we have this... and she was a feminist, and she no longer counts herself in that regard to the third wave feminist, and how boys aren't allowed to be boys. And this, even the way the entire school system is established, it is established to turn boys into little girls. And
Pussies,
there
basically.
could be some of that at play here. But research has been done. I finally just stopped even commenting on Facebook because people weren't listening. I'm like, look, that charge has been studied time and time and time and time and time again. Because this was part of the problem with Columbine, where they said they played some game to get their skills down. And you could argue as far as eye-hand coordination. However, the way you play a video game and the way you shoot a real gun are not the same.
No, they are not. I've actually held, I won't say I've held an actual firearm, but I have held an air pistol before. And I will tell you this much. I wasn't the best at Call of Duty, but I got several kills, and there were times I would go 10-0. For anybody that knows what that means, I'm showing my age. But when I was using that, there was a lot different. Like knowing how to hold the pistol properly, the right grip, to squeeze. What was it? Don't pull, squeeze.
Yep.
A lot of
your breathing is important. I mean, I have shot actual rifles. I've not done any pistols. Yeah. I've done 22s. I've shot M16s. I've shot a couple other things as well as air rifles and things like that. But even if you're just doing a pellet gun or a BB gun, there's those aspects of how you control your breathing and all that stuff is there. And
it's not the same. It's not. I can say that from experience. I never fired an actual firearm. I would like to sometime. Maybe hunting. It looks like a pretty interesting thing to do. That sounds like fun. I wouldn't mind going hunting with some people one day. Just getting to chill and hang out. I mean, that sounds like a very manly thing to do too. Yeah. So why not, right?
Well, there are shotguns too that if you don't hold right will break your shoulder.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
it's not that simple. People they want to simplify it because they think they have all the answers, and they're not willing to listen to the other side of the debate. And yeah, you can say this about all sides of the argument, but it's more so of this. Hey, let's ban guns. Yeah, I'll give you the example I gave my nephew when we were talking about this. Basically, the gun issue, the whole shooting thing, and bringing this whole back to the video game thing. Basically, think of the shooting as a gash in your arm. How do you treat the gash so that you don't die? Do you just slap a Band-Aid on it and call it a day? No, you have to do a couple of things. First of all, you might want to start disinfecting the area. So definitely have some rum and alcohol present. Putting a Band-Aid alone might not be enough. You may actually have to sew up the damn thing. I'm not sure what we call it, but then you probably might start putting. I mean, I'm not a medic.
It's sutures, right? So you're talking stitches and things like that. Well, and depending on how bad the gash is, you may have nerve damage and require surgery. And
exactly,
again, you're treating the disease, if you will. Right. The problem is you have. Is it a minor cut or is it a major cut? But what you're not doing is cutting your arm off.
Exactly.
To say I'm going to ban my arm so that I don't die from this from infection or whatever.
That actually might be worse, depending on the situation.
And that is, that's part of the polarization. And I know people are saying, what's this got to do with pop culture? And in many ways, this is tantamount what we're seeing. This is why we had SJW versions of Marvel. This is why we have such, derision about with The Last Jedi, where Jar Jar and Ryan and Kathleen and everyone else associated with the film, they finally turned Mark to the dark side, is saying, well, look at what Daisy Ridley was saying with The Force Awakens, and people saying Rey's and Mary Sue, and she found that was a sexist comment, when it isn't. It is a label because that was the name of the character in Star Trek fan fiction, where it came from, of this overpowered, over-knowing, over-knowledgeable insertion, the writer insertion of a character into bad writing. And there's versions of it for men as Gary Stu or whatever, and if that would have been a male character at the beginning that was named Gary Stu or Sam Jones or whatever, that's probably what people would call it. And what's also interesting about the whole Mary Sue phenomenon is in fan fiction it is unbelievable to me anyway. I should say, it's amazing how the percentage of that is female written fan fiction. It's like 70 or 75%. It appears in male fan fiction too, but it's overwhelmingly female written. And so it's not a sexist comment, and it's a label attached to a poorly written character, and that's even with Jar Jar and his comments we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think with, hey, if you don't like this because you don't like strong female characters, and it's like, no, goofball. What people are, I'm sure there's someone out there that's pissed off that Rey's a female character. You know, it's like the same 12 people who were upset that Finn was going to be a stormtrooper, and the so-called alt-right was raising a stink on the internet. It was probably 12 or 15 trolls, and then it was amplified by a bunch of bots. Although I'm not convinced it was actual alt-right people, because to me, they wouldn't give two flips about a Star Wars movie. They got, too many other things to complain about. But, I'm sure you're going to find those people out there, but the vast majority of the people who are commenting, male, female, white, black, green, or otherwise, about the Star Wars movies is how poorly they're written, how poorly the characters are developed, how overpowered Rey is, how underutilized Finn is. My complaints about Finn have been they're almost every black stereotype. If he was eating the Star Wars equivalent of fried chicken and watermelon, it would be complete, right? He's, right. He's he's running away from authority. He's a janitor. I'm like, really? Can we put any more stereotypes in here? You morons.
Didn't he have a blaster?
I don't know, but he was a janitor on the Death Star 3.0. He was running from authority. He was trying to hit up a white girl, right? He was, white knighting for a white girl. He was talking talking in cliches. He was overemphasizing his importance, right?
This is just too good.
Yeah, and especially in the first one, and then in the next one, they made him even more of an underutilized character. And to me, Finn had the most potential for the hero's journey. And in some ways, I think that I wish they would have done that with him throughout the three movies, but when you throw in almost every stereotype, it's like, and I think this is in some part why Last Jedi played so poorly in China. Now, I know she wasn't Chinese, and there's some people that are saying it's because she was Korean or something like that, but the actress herself. But it was, she was poorly utilized. It's an attempt at some stereotype. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie, and the few clips I've seen of it are just so bad. I can't even bring myself to watch the whole thing, pilot or
I've seen enough clips, and I've heard enough to basically make an assumption that I still wouldn't want to buy a bootleg of either movie and watch it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, let's go on to The Last Jedi. So let's do this as a segue. So we have the Blu-ray coming out soon that has 14, if I remember correctly, deleted scenes.
Don't buy it.
I don't know much about the Blu-ray, but what this led us in our pre-game discussions about The Last Jedi is I was wondering, because I noticed Jumanji last weekend was back up in the 4th place. Now, it brought in domestically under 10 million for the weekend, but it's been out, was it 1 week or 2 weeks after The Last Jedi?
I think it was like the next week.
So the difference here, reason why I bring up Jumanji, because I've wondered. Jumanji.
I know. I could have sworn you said Jumanji.
Oh, I don't know. we're getting close to an hour and a half here, and it's past 10 o'clock, and I'm tired of talking. But
yes, I know what you.
And Erik is still around for anyone trying to keep score. He's just at home and he's muted. But
tell him to stop eating that stuff.
He didn't want it.
That's a lie.
Part of what I was wondering with how well this has been doing, and I did look it up, worldwide 910 million? It's $90 million budget. It's brought in over 900, I think it was 910 million worldwide, 300 and some odd domestically and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, you can look it up. Part of what I had wondered when early on with its success was how much of this was that people didn't like The Last Jedi, so they went and saw Jumanji. I think that lasts for a couple weeks, but Jumanji's like, it keeps coming back. It was, like 8th the weekend before. Now it's back up to 4th. We'll see what happens this weekend or whatever it does. So one of the things that I searched for while LMP and I were talking before the show was here in Cincinnati, how many theaters both those movies are on, The Last Jedi and Jumanji. And here's what I discovered, at least according to Fandango. Jumanji is currently playing in 14 different theaters in and around Cincinnati area. Okay? So, which is still pretty good. Now, in some of them, it's only playing 2 or 3 times a day. Most, it looks like it's only on one screen. Some of them have 5 or 6 showtimes. The Last Jedi is playing in 3 theaters. One of which is the Dollar Theater. The Danbury Dollar Theater. In fact, I think it has 4. I think it has more showings at the Dollar Theater than it does the other 2. Not combined, but I think one of them has it on twice a day. The other one is 3 or 4, and it's like 5 at the Danbury.
Yeah.
So here we are 2 months out for both these movies, basically. And the next installment of a numbered episode in the powerhouse, the largest franchise in cinematic history, but perhaps until the MCU. The MCU is probably going to wallow a bit. I don't know. In constant dollars, I think Star Wars still wins. It's already in the Dollar Theater, and Jumanji is not yet in the Dollar Theater. So to me, that is a huge perspective, and I think this plays into what Jeff talks about. It brought in a crap ton of money, but it had brought in 700 some odd million less than The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
not a small amount.
No, and the handwriting's on the wall here. If this trend continues, you're going to see it in the Dollar Theater. Episode 9 will come out, a week or 2 before Christmas or somewhere around there. And it could be in the Dollar Theater by end of January. 6 weeks. It could be gone if it is not. Because part of my fear is that there's a bunch of people who look to Jar Jar to save this trilogy.
Not going to work.
And I'm really hoping that it's not salvageable. And I'm really hoping that they kind of... Because... there's a huge divide with TLJ. You have people who didn't like Force Awakens and didn't like TLJ because it was more the same and it was horrible. You have people who did like The Force Awakens but didn't like TLJ because of a poorly written script and it went in a big circle. And the people that I know who liked The Last Jedi like that it's written in one big circle, that anybody can be anybody. And the nihilistic concept that it's all for naught, they like finally seeing in cinema.
So basically, God, I hate that term nihilism because I think now it only got popular because of the whole Rick and Morty meme.
I don't know, but what's interesting is some of these people I went to college with. So these aren't people my age that like TLJ for that. Now, my comment to all of those who have been is I would rather see Camus' The Stranger, and I know Camus argued he was not a nihilist, but everyone thinks he is, because The Stranger is quite a nihilistic written, book. It would be very, very difficult to make that into a movie because the structure of just the way the sentence structure changes throughout the novel is very integral into its basis and what it has. But, and I'll give you, and for anyone who's not read it, it starts with very simple structure, ends up very complex at the end.
Basically, when you have a hangover, you wake up in a ditch and you're trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, but yeah. So it doesn't, that to me isn't a selling point. And in many ways, I could see that. Okay, fine. Ryan, do that in your own. I haven't seen Looper, so I don't know what his other movies have. Do that in your own movie, but it's not what Star Wars is about. And Star Wars is more than just lasers, and that's unfortunately in my view, the fans that came along around the time of the prequels. That's what they thought Star Wars was about, and they missed the entire meaning of the trilogy. But go, like I've said this many times because I've done the image searches. Go look at who's standing in line in 1977, and you count how many 6-year-olds are in line. You're probably going to find a couple, but it's mostly 11 to 17-year-olds because that was the target audience, and mostly male, but it was young adult entertainment. It was those who were seeing this, the PG, Sinbad movies. This is not for little kids. It never was a kids. It was a young adults movie, not a 4 and 5-year-olds movie. And so, it was clean, wholesome entertainment, but it captured. It was also a factor of its time, right? It was in a time when the United States was in a bit of a low point. Now it was before the Iran hostage crisis, but that just kind of made things worse. But we had an economy that was headed the wrong direction. We were, coming off the Vietnam War. And we were really in a low point, so that was also part of it. The cultural significance was really played into its time framing. So, but again, go do your image search and let me know how many little children you see in line for that movie. And you're going to find very, very, very few. But now, the prequels were dumbed down in many ways. And, of course, as I said before, too, it's George unabated and unedited with Marcia helping him make a better movie, as well as others. Marcia's not the only one. But and you had a script that was not well thought out. So... And, but I find it significant that Jumanji's still strong in U.S. theaters, even around here. I was surprised that there were 14. I mean, LMP, you were listening to me while I was counting. I couldn't believe it was that many. I was like thinking 7 or 8, but 14 screens, 14 theaters it's still in 2 months after release. And The Last Jedi's in 3, including the dollar theater. So
that again, it's very impressive because Jumanji could have been one of those movies that was just your typical. I mean, it has the formula of a typical comedy. It just like slapstick. You got major Hollywood actor. You got your stereotypical fat man, your stereotypical little man, and the hot chick.
Yeah. And
you know what? Yeah, Karen Gillan has been growing on me. Yeah, I didn't like her that much in Doctor Who, but she's grown a little on me. So fuck it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, it had the makings of just your typical comedy. And I guess part of it is also because it's a part of, a sign of the times of just how bad entertainment is, that people are saying, you know what? This movie is actually quite good or quite entertaining, and I would rather watch this than everything else is out there. Right? I mean, what's his name? Jar Jar Abrams can talk about not liking strong female characters. I can tell obviously he's not a strong female. Dumb androgynous look. Jesus, I saw him on the thumbnails. I'm like, that's him? That's a dude? Like, no, that's not a dude. That's not even a beta. That's Pat. It's
what other movie was Karen in? I saw her in something else. It was right after she was no longer... Was it Oculus?
I don't remember. I know she was in Guardians, and she actually did good in the second Guardians movie. Much better than her act than what I thought was her in the first one.
Yeah, Oculus. I saw her. I liked her in that movie. That was really weird too, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, she came a long way. She really has earned her. She's earned her medal.
Yeah, and see, to me, when I look, and I haven't seen Jumanji yet either, but my daughter has, and she says great fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it is 910. So domestically, at least according to Box Office Mojo, at the moment, 381.6 million domestically, 528.6 million worldwide. So it's basically 42% is domestic and 58% of its box office is worldwide. So it's a good mixture. So it's still strong U.S. showing, 910 million overall. So, and here's the thing that really blew my mind. Top movies in the past 365 days, Jumanji is number 5.
That is saying a lot. That I did not even know that.
So the 4 above it. Now, The Last Jedi, ironically, is above it because it brought in so much that first weekend, and the second, but it started to drop rapidly. Beauty and the Beast, 2017 version, which blows my mind because that just was horrible. Wonder Woman, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then Jumanji. So it's better than Spider-Man Homecoming.
Thank God.
Thor, Ragnarok, Black Panther, although that'll probably go up. Well, we'll see. That was the other topic we had, is there was a lot, and Jeff has talked about this. I've seen videos of people all dressed up in so-called African garb to see this movie. They really marketed it as this African, culture come to fruition movie, and it wasn't. So how much backlash, if you will, is there going to be this weekend's box office when the white people are allowed to see it now? Because you had all those people tweeting about, hey, I'm white, I don't know if I want to see it, or if I don't see it, if I do see it, if I'm taking a space of someone who's black who can't see it because I'm there, and if I don't see it, I'm still a racist. I mean, there was all of this navel gazing, again, cultural Marxism stupidity over how people were reacting to the movie before it came out. It didn't have that message. It did have a little bit. It was an ethnocentric, protectionist, alt-right almost movie.
Ironically,
right? But it wasn't anti-white. The Hobbit they brought back to heal him because he got injured. You did have a South African who was the stereotypical the white bad guy that they killed halfway through the movie. But you had this might make right, this is non-democracy, oligarchy, whoever wins becomes king, internal struggle, political fight going on. And I just wonder how much staying power. It did like $200 some odd million its opening weekend. I wonder, because that message wasn't there, how many people are gonna basically give a big middle finger to Marvel, and they're not going to come back the next weekend.
Honestly, this goes. I think I forgot what. Damn, my memory's so bad I can't even remember this. But we were talking a topic before about inclusivity and it was about Star Wars. You had all this time to get to know the franchise, get to understand it, get to watch some class. Yeah, maybe they're not the original tapes, maybe they're not the original quality, but there's a quality out there of it that exists. These are something you can go by, something you can reference, right? The same thing with this whole Black Panther and this whole African. And by the way, when we say an African, I'm being general here because there ain't one African culture. It's numerous, and they do distinguish themselves between tribes and countries and so on. So it's all of a sudden now, because a movie came out, all of a sudden, and I have to be, and I'm gonna just say it like it is. It's this pro Black mentality that people have, that it's oh, now I have to show pride in my own heritage or something like that. No, because this movie really isn't about your heritage. This movie is about a fictional kingdom, if you will, located in a country. In the continent, where the majority of the continent is not doing well economically. They're not really prospering. There's a lot of hunger. There's a lot of desert area. There's a lot going on. People are not really up to the levels of civilization that they could be, and yet part of that country. Damn it, man! I keep saying countries. I keep saying continent. Excuse me. Part of that continent said to themselves, "Hey, we found this. We're gonna advance our own society. We're not gonna We're not gonna let any outsiders in. We're gonna isolate ourselves. In fact, we're gonna go a step further and cloak ourselves from the rest of the world. They're an invisible kingdom. Only the people that know how to get there know how to get there. Think of it as a more exclusive version of the Batcave, and starting to sound like Black Panther and Batman have more similarities than might be letting on. But that's another topic for another time, and I'm not going to get into that
right now. It's like the island in Lost. Although you
Exactly.
don't stumble across it. We see this in the Lost world, right? And they go to Antarctica and they find a cave that they float through, and then all of a sudden they're in this, Jurassic Park, basically, that time is forgotten, that the mists hide. Well, you get a similar thing with King Kong, right? There's this mist that hide an island that's there. And I like that kind of hidden in almost plain sight concept. But yeah, that's why I said you have this. They find it's not unobtainium. It's, what do they call it? Vibranium. Yeah. And and what I think is interesting is most of the guys gave it a 7.5. I think Kendo gave it a 7. So we'll say a 7.35 average.
So a nice 7.
The audience participation on Rotten Tomatoes is like 77, 78%, depending on when you look at it. I think it could go down a little bit. It feels like it's like kind of like TLJ. Feels like it's being artificially propped up at 48%. But it sounds like most people had the similar reaction. It's an okay movie. It is I liked some of the things Nick said about it because he seems to be in a similar phase I am. I'm like, I don't need another side story, origin story. Can we just get on with the MCU, just end it, and then maybe we go back to 1 or 2 superhero movies a year that may or may not have any bearing on one another. This 3 or 4 a year is really getting to be tiring. And I'm still surprised they still make a lot of money with these things. Well, except DC, who can't seem to make a good film, even on accident. I'm beginning to think Wonder Woman was more an accident than it was on purpose.
Ironically, also.
Right, and it wasn't even that good a movie, but it just compared to all the other DC movies, it was better. And Jumanji is closing in on $300 million more than it made, just in case anybody's keeping score. But I just wonder and that's what we'll see this weekend. When we look at Monday, Tuesday's numbers, we'll see, this past weekend it was 200 and some odd million, and if it's more than I can't even imagine it maintaining 50%. And bringing in 100 million the second weekend.
I don't know, because and it's ridiculous that this is a movie that could have came out years ago, right? And it probably would have had the similar rating, more or less. Like, it probably would have been a solid 7, 8 maybe, if it was any good. Like, it could have been somewhere around that ballpark.
Yeah, I think it would come out. I think it would come out 2 or 3 years ago. The professional score would not have been 98%.
Exactly, that's the thing. And Disney, Marvel, whatever, they knew what they were doing with this. Like I said, it was no coincidence that the movie had to come out in February. That was not a coincidence. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah,
it's like what they did with Deadpool, except in reverse. They made that movie come out in one of the most weirdest times to really put out a superhero movie,
right,
which was in February, and that an R-rated superhero movie.
Yeah.
Usually, especially around Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
It's not really like a Valentine's Day movie, and yet despite everything that it was, all the obstacles put in its way, it did really good for itself, and in fact was very loved. It was loved by many people. I know a lot of parents took their kids to that movie.
Right.
So I still enjoy that.
Well, it's rated R. What part of rated R do you not understand?
Like, they don't. But if it had come out any other month, we probably would have seen a different box office draw. It probably might have been even a lot bigger in the first week than it was.
Yeah. Well, February, March is stereotypical movie dump. Movies you dump out that you don't think are going to do well.
Yeah.
And that's part, I think, why they also hype the crap out of Black Panther. But we'll see. We'll see what. When I look at, okay, it was 200 million, and I think it's going to only pull in maybe 50 to 70 million this coming weekend. I mean, that's more than a 50% drop. But I think it's because of the incredible hype. But what I also haven't seen are a lot of people complaining about, hey, where was the culture? And yeah, I know what you mean about the continent. I mean, this is more West African. This is not Ethiopia on the east side where you have, Ethiopia have, actually in Ethiopia you have a very heavy Christian and Jewish influence. And then you get into the Horn of Africa, and you get into more Arabic states. And then North Africa, you have obviously the Arab, in Egypt and Morocco and Algiers and things like that, with some French influence. So
and then somewhere in Uganda, you got like Red Echidnas asking if you know the way and if you like Ebola or something.
I've seen. There was some YouTube video of theirs. I forget. I wish I would have kept how I found it. I kind of stumbled across it. It was hilarious. And they're making more movies.
You lost your way to it?
Yeah, I did. I don't have Ebola, so I don't know how the way back. But they were saying support our movies, and they think it was pretty funny. It didn't have any of that stuff from the Do You Know the Way video, but it was pretty interesting. It's like real African movies. It's kind of like Bollywood. It's like India got tired of the British and American cinema too. But there's one. It's some German actor in who's got brown face on, playing some Indian chic and something, and they just started making their own movies. It's like, and after some struggles, they've got their own industry, and
They do.
it's kind of like the Chinese martial arts movies. They got sick of the slapstick, the spaghetti western style versions in America, and they started making their own. So,
hey, they're always fun to watch.
And I liked what was that? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I mean, it does get silly because they're flying around, combating each other, but I do like the movie. So other things I like and I'm anticipating is the Tick season, the second half of season 1.
No one spoil it. I'm gonna watch it after the show.
Yeah, the Tick is my favorite superhero. I identify more with the Tick than any other superhero. I have more idiosyncrasies that are along with the Tick than any other superhero. And when I came across the cartoon years ago, and then the anime, I still like the Ward Burton version of it. And
that's also on Amazon. By the way,
it's on Netflix, and I've watched when the Tick came back to Amazon, and I saw that I could still watch the other series. I watched the whole thing. Now the cartoon I got into it a little bit and got out of it and got into it, but the live action, I like the live action better. I mean, I like the live action Batman and Superman's better than I ever did the cartoons. But I for one cannot wait for that season because I thought it was the 25th. Is it already? I don't know.
Well, it's the 23rd, but apparently it's out already. I will confirm that in a little bit.
But speaking of a show that season 2 ended last week, was the Grand Tour, which was an absolute silly episode, so stereotypical of those three. I know some people are like, I don't want like Top Gear. Top Gear was a great show.
Yeah, I used to watch it with my ex. And one of my favorite characters on that show, for no reason other than pure comedy, became the Stig.
Yeah. That part of the old Top Gear I do miss. This year I actually liked in season 1 the American that they had driving stuff. I liked some of the things that he was saying and thought it was funny. I guess the British fans did not like it, and now they have some British chick who does a decent job, but I liked the American poking, especially the European cars. What makes this thing go? It ain't got no horses. Some of it, because he was a cousin of some NASCAR driver. I think he drove in the NASCAR Truck Series, I do believe. So I liked the contrast, and I guess it was lost on the British audience. I don't know who all they said that fans didn't like it, but I liked it. And so the chick they have this year, she was okay, but she just didn't have any, it's like, let your personality out a little bit,
Yeah, stop being off the prompter.
Right, she takes it a little too seriously, and that was part of what I liked about the Stig, when they would have him listening to crazy music. And sometimes when people would be in the car with him. Now, granted, I think they use different people, but just even though you can't see his face, just by the way his body language and the way he would look at people, like, are you crazy?
There was nice. Oh my God! If we were to talk about moments, I used to watch that show and the Stig. There was one where I think he saw I forgot what he was doing. It was some type of race that they were having. I think it was like part of a foot race or something like that. It was part of the race. And I think he got distracted by like a dead bird on the street, and he just stared down at it. Like, anybody here ever saw that movie American Beauty and that weird kid with the bag?
Yeah.
Just like that, like he would stare at it, like, oh, there's got to be something to this that the Stig likes. And then there was another one. I think it was the same episode where he was in the bus with all the people. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the one where they had a race across London, and he was doing public transportation.
Yeah, and I think he was. I'm trying to remember if that was also the same episode where he went. Oh no, there was like a commercial or something where I think he went to buy his own book or something.
Oh yeah.
Like he was like knocking them over and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, did you see the one where they had the Stig farm and they had all of the Stigs in different colors and they were, running into things and falling over and yeah.
His fat American cousin in a different episode.
Oh yeah.
Or his what was it? His Asian cousin who just did karate.
Yeah, and then you had his trucking cousin in England who had.
Oh shit! I have not seen that one.
The arm. So obviously it would be the right arm because they sit on the right hand side of the cab, but he's still in that white uniform, but they had dyed the arm brown, like he's gotten tan from having his arm out the window. His German cousin, you can see the mullet, and they had the one when they were in Africa. They had an African cousin, so he has the uniform on sort of, but it's like the arms are cut off, the legs are cut in shorts, and he has sandals on, and
it's like the stereotype of wherever that cousin's from.
Right. Yeah, his fat American cousin was hilarious.
Almost makes me wonder if they go to like the Middle East or something, what his cousin does there.
Yeah.
Or living.
But that's the part I kind of wish the BBC would just let him have. It's like, that was Clarkson's creation. Because the other, the shows that he came from, the old Top Gear and was it Fifth Gear or something like that was the other one. They had Tip Neville on, I think it was Fifth Gear. He's a former race car driver. And that was the whole point of Clarkson. And if you look at the other Top Gears, they have two enthusiasts, maybe journalists, and an actual professional racer. They didn't even keep the formula in the other Top Gears, and I think they've all gone off the air. But the formula that worked were 3 sports enthusiast journalists and no professional driver. And this is why you get the off-the-top reviews of, Lamborghinis and Ferraris and crap like that, and, the star and the affordable car and all that stuff. Reasonably priced car.
You also had some good episodes. I think there was one where I forgot the name of the characters, but they had the one, what was it, up the mountain, and they were testing the pickup trucks.
Oh yeah.
And there was a whole like survivability thing going on there as well. No Stig in that episode from what I remember, but it was still an entertaining episode nonetheless. I found some enjoyment in that series for the few episodes that I saw here and there.
Yeah.
Honestly, a formula like that in the current show would sound pretty entertaining. It would make me want to watch it, but like I've heard from some people, it doesn't have that charm. And honestly, if it doesn't, then why would I want to watch it in the first place?
Yep.
Give me some Stig at least. Like, give us the American Stig, and then like introduce us to his culturally, politically incorrect cousins.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I have no other topics
except for the
BBC.
There we go.
So, let's do the BBC and then listener comments and wrap this one up because we're getting to be almost 2 hours already. So this week's BBC is Jessica. I'm going to say Gomes with an S and not a Z. She is of, what did we say? It was Portuguese and Chinese, I think. Portuguese and Chinese origins. Her dad's Portuguese. Her mom's Chinese. She is gorgeous. She's basically 5'9.5". And I will get her into the thumbnail. So. Unlike
stop complaining who it was last week.
So that was and one of the dogs just farted. Oh my god, I'm gonna die before I get this thing out the door. So let's look at comments from last it's been 2 weeks ago video. So episode 30, Tap and Die, King of the Hill is the best anime ever.
I agree. Hank Hill definitely would beat Superman in the battle, and Beerus is a bitch. Yeah. Next question.
So Kaylin Webb wrote, where's my BBC in the thumbnail?
Well, you're getting one this week.
And I was too lazy. I had a picture of our BBC that I was working on. I was like cutting out and removing stuff, and I thought, screw it. I couldn't figure out how to get her in there with the way the Han Solo picture that I had. Plus, I was also doing an experiment to see if we had better listenership. No, because our two most popular, I think our first episode is the most viewed, and then I think it's Jessica Simpson, and then I want to say the third most viewed one is with Danielle Page as the thumbnail. And I tried to explain to her what the BBC was when I was down in Atlanta, and I was like, well, it's kind of Kendo's creation, but we kind of take it. I said, big, beautiful cleavage, I think is what he says, or chest or something. But so Danielle, if you're still listening, it's like it's a highest compliment us nerds can pay a woman and still be not too weird. Kendo Slice left a comment. Nice to hear good friend of the show, Justin Beck. Yeah, and Justin, if you're listening, let us know, man. Any Friday you are available. And Loudy, too. I know he's mentioned about wanting to be back on this show again. And anytime you got a Friday open, just let me know, and we'll work you in. And Kalen Webb also has another comment, apparently at 12:49. So he left a timestamp. I like to reward devs for creating an engaging and addictive game by paying for MTX and DLC. Oh, so I guess we're talking about some of the, I may be in the minority, though studios such as Rockstar Games have a daily income of $5 million from GTA 5 microtransactions alone.
I can imagine.
Wow. That's a lot of income. Well, see, I play WoW, so, and they have, I don't know if they really have microtransactions. You can buy pets and crap like that, and I'm not buying the new one because I now have an API warning that at some point Metal 1 is no longer to be supported, and I have to upgrade to Metal 2, which is not supported on my current Mac hardware, so I have yet another reason to upgrade. But I haven't paid in money, in actual my dollars, so the monthly subscription in nearly 3 years, I think, maybe longer, because I make enough in the auction house, in the online auction house, to buy tokens. So somebody's paid $20 for however much gold they can get for a token, whereas I make enough in game to pay for my time, and I do not spend hours upon hours upon hours every day doing that. For a while, during in the heyday of Warlords of Draenor, you actually had follower missions that brought gold in. And what's crazy is it drove the price up to about 180,000 on the U.S. realms. But I also had a way to tap into my computer remotely. So in the middle of the day, I would go through them all, and I had several characters. But I was spending maybe on half an hour to an hour a day just running follower missions, having the right types of followers with the right type of characteristics, generate enough gold that I would buy 2 tokens a month. So, and then they got rid of it. They nerfed that. But I had already paid for a year in advance. So now I'm pretty much month to month. But that's because I don't play the auction house as religiously as I could to make more money. So that is the end of the comments, and that is the end of the episode. And I don't know if Erik wants to unmute to say goodnight or not. But
I'll say one last thing before we wrap up.
All right.
So for anybody out there that wants any entertainment with strong female characters, if you have a Nintendo Switch, they re-released a port for Bayonetta 1 and 2 on the Switch. If you're lucky enough to get a copy of the import, which has both physical copies, great. If not, you still have the American version that comes with a digital download of the first game. Strong female character, created by a female character in Japan, no less, of all places, but why not? Beautiful, courageous. I played the port of the game and the release of Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U, so I was one of those people that actually bought that console. Sue me. But it's if you haven't bought it on the Wii U, you have a Switch or plan on getting one, that might be an interesting pickup. And tell Jar Abrams you're not afraid of strong female characters. If they're written well, they have an interesting story behind them, backstory, build, everything whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. So take a copy of that game, play it, find an inner manhood, and tell Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know, maybe go eat one or something. So, yeah, that's about it.
All right. This has been episode 31 of the Fancast. I have been your host, Brainmuffin, the lifting nerd. And with me has been Liquid Metal Pro.
Jason, I agree. That one's for you, pal.
And Eric, you still there, or are you gone? I think he's still muted.
Chipotle's starting to smell bad, so I don't think he's still there.
All right. We will see you next week, and peace out.
And that shall take care of the little SOBs. Did you catch that?